The red carpet was glittering under the blinding lights of cameras, flashes popping every few seconds as the elite of Hollywood walked by. Fans screamed, holding up signs, while journalists hustled to get the perfect angle. It was supposed to be another glamorous night, a celebration of talent and charity, the kind of event where smiles and handshakes are the currency of the evening. Steven Seagal had arrived quietly, in his signature black outfit, his presence commanding without needing to raise his voice. He was accompanied by his wife, who looked stunning in a sleek, elegant gown. Cameras turned instinctively to the couple, recognizing their combined aura of calm confidence and understated power. Yet no one could have anticipated the moment that was about to unfold. Out of nowhere, Will Smith, who had been mingling nearby, walked directly towards Seagal's wife. The crowd barely had time to react before the unthinkable happened. A sharp slap across her face, public, unprovoked, and shocking in its brazenness. Gasps erupted from the audience. Some people shrieked, others froze in disbelief. 1,000 cameras clicked simultaneously, capturing every millisecond of the moment. The atmosphere shifted instantly. What had been an evening of elegance and celebration now carried a tense, almost electric energy. People instinctively stepped back, unsure of what to do, while security personnel rushed toward the scene, their faces tense and alert. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phones hovered in the air, recording, streaming, and sharing what would soon go viral. And yet, amidst all the chaos, Steven Seagal did something no one expected. He remained calm. His eyes never left Will Smith, his body unshaken, his breathing steady. A subtle tightening of his jaw, a slight narrowing of his gaze told everyone around that he was fully aware, fully in control, and that the next move would come from him. What Steven did next, the murmurs began to spread among the shocked audience, left everyone completely speechless. Cameras zoomed in on his face, capturing a mixture of calm determination and quiet fury. It was the moment that would define the rest of the night. A moment where the world would witness the unexpected, the calculated, the incredible. The tension was palpable. Every heartbeat seemed louder. Every whisper carried weight. No one knew exactly what would happen next. But one thing was certain. This public event had just turned into a confrontation no one would forget. The moment Will Smith's hand connected with Seagal's wife, time seemed to slow. Gasps echoed across the room, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and fear. Some audience members froze entirely, their phones hovering midair as they tried to capture the unfolding chaos. Others instinctively stepped forward, unsure whether to intervene or maintain a safe distance. Security personnel sprinted toward the scene, faces etched with urgency and concern, but even they moved cautiously, knowing this was no ordinary altercation. Cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every detail of the shocking incident. The sharpness of the slap, the immediate reaction of Seagal's wife, the tension in Will Smith's posture, and most importantly, the calm, unreadable expression on Steven Seagal's face. Unlike everyone else in the room, Seagal remained remarkably composed. His eyes were locked on Will Smith, assessing, calculating, observing the man who had dared to commit such a brazen act in public. The crowd was in chaos, whispers spreading like wildfire. Did he really just do that? Oh my God, Steven is not reacting. What's he planning next? Phones streamed the incident live to thousands of viewers worldwide. And within seconds, the clip would begin to make its way onto social media. Memes, comments, and shocked reactions were already forming in the digital sphere, even as the event continued. Despite the pandemonium around him, Seagal's demeanor was a masterclass in composure. He didn't flinch, he didn't lunge, he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he subtly shifted his weight, maintaining an unshakable presence, and positioned himself slightly between his wife and Will Smith. A small gesture of protection that carried an enormous silent weight. Every eye in the room was drawn to him. The contrast could not have been starker. One man full of impulsive aggression, the other embodying calm authority. Now, let's take a moment to step into the audience. Think about where you are watching this, what city or country. The energy in that room was electric. Every heartbeat synchronized with the tension. If I had been there, I can imagine my first instinct would have been a mix of fear and adrenaline. Frozen for a brief second, trying to process what just happened. My eyes would dart between Seagal and Will Smith, my hand gripping my phone to record, yet my brain screaming to step in carefully. But then, in that chaos, I would realize that rushing in might escalate the situation, so I would take a moment to breathe and observe. I would think, Steven Seagal is calm. He knows what he's doing. Let me not make this worse. Now imagine yourself there. If you were in that audience, what would you do? Would you step forward, speak up, or freeze in shock like everyone else? Or would you, like me, watch carefully and try to gauge the situation before acting? Take a moment to imagine it fully, and then type your response in the comments below. Be honest, if you were there, what would be your first move? Meanwhile, the staff tried to manage the situation, gently urging bystanders to step back while keeping the path clear. Some whispered reassurances to Seagal's wife, helping her regain composure, while others tried to calm the visibly stunned crowd. The tension was suffocating. Everyone in the room understood that this was more than a simple public incident. This was a test of composure, restraint, and the unspoken rules of public confrontation. Seagal's eyes never left Will Smith. Every subtle movement, every twitch, every shifting weight was catalogued in his mind. He was not angry, at least not outwardly, but his presence alone sent a clear message. He was aware, he was ready, and he would respond, but only on his terms. The crowd, sensing this, leaned in closer, collectively holding their breath. Some whispered encouragement to Will Smith, urging him to explain, apologize, or back down, while others silently predicted that Seagal's response would be nothing short of extraordinary. As the seconds stretched into what felt like minutes, the cameras captured the tiniest details. The way Seagal's jaw tightened just slightly, the calm yet unwavering intensity in his eyes, the slight shift in his stance. Every motion communicated a controlled energy, a warning that any rash move from Will Smith could trigger a public reckoning. The entire room became a stage. Every bystander, celebrity, journalist, and fan was now part of a silent audience, waiting for Steven Seagal to act. What would he do? Would he lash out in retaliation? Or would he maintain his calm, allowing his actions to speak louder than words? This was a moment that would be remembered for years. A perfect storm of shock, suspense, and the raw power of composure. Even as social media notifications began exploding worldwide, Seagal remained in complete control. His calmness was a quiet storm, a contrast so stark against Will Smith's impulsive aggression that it drew the attention and awe of everyone present. It was clear, what Seagal did next would leave a mark not just on the people in the room, but on the millions watching this event unfold online. The atmosphere in the hall was electric. Every heartbeat felt louder, every whisper sharper. Cameras continued to flash. But now they were not just capturing glamour. They were capturing tension, a moment of unspoken confrontation that had everyone on edge. Will Smith stood nearby, a smug expression on his face, assuming that the act of slapping Seagal's wife had unsettled him. But Steven remained calm, silent, every fiber of his body radiating a controlled intensity that seemed almost palpable. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Guests whispered nervously, trying to process the events. Security hovered, ready to intervene if necessary, yet hesitant, as though waiting to see if Steven would react. The media had already started streaming live, and millions around the world were watching every micro-expression, every subtle gesture, knowing that a single move could change the narrative forever. Steven finally shifted slightly, a small but deliberate movement that drew all eyes to him. His calm demeanor was no act. It was a strategic choice. He took a step forward, positioning himself subtly between Will Smith and his wife, not in a threatening manner, but in a way that communicated control and protection. Every movement was calculated, measured, and precise. It was clear that he was preparing to respond, but not out of anger. Instead, he was preparing to make a statement, one that would leave everyone in awe. The tension in the room escalated further. Some guests whispered to each other, "Is he going to retaliate physically?" Others shook their heads. "No, he's waiting. He's thinking." Cameras zoomed in on Will Smith's face. For the first time, doubt and uncertainty flashed across his expression. The smugness began to falter as he realized that Steven Seagal was not reacting impulsively. Instead, he was calculating, observing, and about to respond in a way that would shock everyone. Now, imagine yourself there in the audience. The energy is almost suffocating, and your eyes are locked on Steven Seagal. If I were Steven in that exact moment, I would take a deep, deliberate breath. I would remind myself that reacting impulsively could escalate the situation and make everything worse. I would focus on assessing Will Smith's body language, his intentions, and the reactions of the surrounding crowd. Then, I would decide. The response must be firm, strategic, and undeniable. Not loud, not violent, but powerful in its precision. If I were you, watching this unfold live, you'd feel a mix of fear, anticipation, and awe. You might instinctively step closer, clutch your phone, or whisper to a friend. But deep down, you'd know that the person truly in control is the one who remains calm under pressure. Now type your answer in the comments. If you were Steven Seagal at that moment, what would your first move be? How would you assert control without losing composure? As the seconds stretched, Steven spoke. But not in anger. His voice was calm, firm, and deliberate, carrying over the murmurs of the stunned audience. Every word was measured, chosen to assert authority without aggression, to establish control without escalating tension. The crowd leaned in, every ear straining to catch what he would say. Will Smith's confident posture wavered slightly. The first crack appeared in his bravado. Seagal's wife, standing beside him, regained her composure slightly, sensing the unspoken message in her husband's stance. He had this under control. The guests were witnessing not just a confrontation, but a masterclass in restraint, strategy, and poise. Every subtle motion tilting his head, narrowing his gaze, the way he shifted his weight, communicated dominance without a single act of violence. By now, the live streams were exploding. Viewers from around the world were commenting in real time. Is Steven going to do it? This is insane. The tension is unreal. Clips of the initial slap were being shared alongside Steven's calm posture, highlighting the contrast between impulsive aggression and controlled response. The narrative was starting to shift. The audience was beginning to realize that the true power in the room was not in the one who had acted first, but in the one who had remained unshaken. And then, just when the room's energy seemed unbearable, Steven made a subtle yet deliberate movement, a small step forward, a measured gaze, and a calm but commanding tone that cut through the chaos. It was a silent announcement. The next move would come from him, on his terms, and it would leave an impact no one would forget. The hall had fallen into a tense, almost suffocating silence. Every eye in the room was fixed on Steven Seagal, every camera lens capturing his slightest movement. Will Smith's smug confidence had begun to waver, replaced by uncertainty as he realized that the man he had tried to provoke was not only calm but calculating. This was no ordinary confrontation. It was a masterclass in strategy and composure, and everyone present could feel the weight of it. Seagal finally took a deliberate step forward, his movements precise, his body language controlled yet authoritative. He didn't shout, he didn't make sudden gestures, but every shift of his stance communicated a single, clear message. He was aware, he was prepared, and he would respond, but on his own terms. The audience held their collective breath, waiting to see if he would choose verbal retaliation, a subtle warning, or something entirely unexpected. His voice, when he spoke, was calm but firm, carrying effortlessly across the hushed room. Every word was carefully measured, designed not to escalate the situation, but to assert dominance and regain control of the moment. He addressed the incident without anger, without aggression. Yet his tone left no doubt that what had occurred was unacceptable. The crowd was captivated, leaning in closer, eyes wide, recording every second. Will Smith, for the first time, seemed genuinely unsettled. The initial shock of the slap had been one thing, but now he was faced with a composed and unflinching response, and he realized quickly that he had misjudged his opponent. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. The impulsive aggression that had seemed bold moments ago now appeared reckless and naive in comparison to Seagal's measured control. Pause for a moment, and imagine yourself in that room. If I were Steven Seagal, I would focus entirely on controlling the situation without resorting to anger or violence. My first instinct would be to protect my wife subtly, Assert authority with body language and then speak calmly, making it clear that this behavior is unacceptable, but without losing composure. The crowd would be my silent witnesses, their reactions amplifying the weight of every word. Now, imagine yourself in Seagal'S position. What would you do differently? Would you confront Will Smith verbally, use subtle gestures to assert control, or rely entirely on calm, strategic intimidation? Take a moment to visualize it fully, then type your detailed response in the comments. If you were Steven, how would you handle this shocking moment? Seagal'S response was a masterful blend of verbal assertiveness and controlled presence. He did not yell. He did not storm toward Will Smith. Instead, his calm authority alone caused a shift in the energy of the room. Guests who had been frozen in shock began to relax slightly, sensing that the situation was under control. The staff and security, too, now operated with confidence, moving into place to ensure safety but no longer panicking. The subtle gestures of Seagal's, slight forward lean, unwavering gaze, controlled breathing, communicated more than words ever could. It was a demonstration of power that didn't need violence. The ability to command a room, to take control of chaos, and to make a statement with dignity and strategy. Will Smith's uncertainty grew by the second, and even the murmurs from bystanders reflected this shift, whispers of admiration, disbelief, and silent acknowledgement of Seagal's authority. Every camera captured this pivotal moment, and every viewer watching live could feel the tension. The narrative had shifted. The story was no longer just about the shocking slap, but about how Steven Seagal chose to respond. This was a lesson in restraint, a demonstration of true control, and the audience sensed it instinctively. Seagal's strategic response had turned what could have been a humiliating public confrontation into a display of composure, intellect, and authority. The crowd, initially anxious and tense, now watched in awe as the energy shifted, recognizing that the real power in the room was not in the impulsive act of aggression, but in the calm, measured response that followed. The room seemed frozen in time, the air heavy with anticipation. Every gaze was fixed on Steven Seagal, whose calm demeanor had transformed a chaotic, shocking moment into a suspenseful standoff. Will Smith, who had started the evening confident and unapologetic, now felt the weight of all eyes upon him, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. The energy had shifted entirely. Seagal stepped forward with deliberate precision, closing the subtle distance between himself and Will Smith. He didn't shout. He didn't move aggressively yet. In every measured step, in every controlled breath, there was an unmistakable command of the room. It was as though the entire hall recognized instinctively that the next action would define the night, and perhaps the reputation of everyone involved. Then, Seagal spoke. His voice cut through the tension like a blade, calm, steady, and filled with authority. "What just happened was unacceptable," he said. "There are lines in public conduct that no one should cross, and today one was crossed." The words were simple, precise, and delivered with such control that the shock in the room was palpable. No anger, no shouting, just quiet, undeniable authority. The audience collectively exhaled. Cameras zoomed in on Will Smith's reaction. His smirk had vanished entirely, replaced with an expression of realization and regret. The subtle power of Seagal's calm yet commanding response was evident to everyone. This was not just a verbal statement. It was a demonstration of unshakable control. A public display that left Smith momentarily speechless. Now, pause for a moment and imagine yourself in this room. If I were Steven Seagal, I would use the shock of composure as my greatest weapon. My first move would be measured, assert authority verbally, without raising my voice, showing everyone that impulsive aggression cannot match control and strategy. I would protect my wife, assert the boundaries of respect, and leave no doubt in the mind of the aggressor that the power dynamic has shifted. Now think about yourself. If you were in Steven's shoes, how would you respond? Would you mirror his calm, use words to assert control, or take a subtle action to demonstrate authority? Imagine your voice, your stance, your gaze. Take a moment to picture it fully. Then write your detailed response in the comments. If you were Steven, what would your shock move be? As the seconds passed, the room became a masterclass in tension and authority. Every guest was captivated. Some whispered among themselves, awed by the quiet strength and dignity Seagal displayed. Others recorded every second, knowing that this confrontation would become viral footage within moments. Even the staff, who had initially been on edge, now moved with precision and confidence, reinforcing Seagal's command of the situation. Will Smith, sensing the subtle but undeniable shift in power, tried to regain composure, but it was too late. The atmosphere itself had changed. Every movement Seagal made, every pause in his voice carried weight. The calm shock of his response had turned the entire narrative, from the moment of impulsive aggression to a story of restraint, intelligence, and authority. Seagal's shock move was subtle yet devastating. He didn't need to strike, he didn't need to yell, and he didn't need theatrics. His calm assertion, the precise choice of words, and the way he positioned himself, protective of his wife yet commanding over the situation, created a moment that stunned the entire hall. The shock wasn't in violence. It was in the realization that composure, strategy, and confidence could outperform brute reaction every time. The audience, now fully aware, watched as Will Smith's confidence crumbled. Murmurs of awe spread. "That's incredible. He didn't even need to fight. The way he handled it is masterful." Phones captured every detail, ensuring that millions more watching online would witness the same undeniable truth. Steven Seagal's calm shock move had changed everything. By the end of the moment, it was clear to everyone, the public, the staff, and the cameras, that what had initially seemed like a humiliating situation was now a demonstration of controlled authority, strategic brilliance, and emotional intelligence. The shock move wasn't physical. It was mental, psychological, and perfectly executed, leaving the audience and the aggressor equally stunned. The room was still humming with tension, but slowly a shift began to ripple through the audience. What had started as a shocking public confrontation was now turning into a masterclass in restraint and authority. Cameras captured every angle, the slight narrowing of Steven Seagal's eyes, the way he subtly positioned himself to protect his wife while maintaining full control, and the stunned expression on Will Smith's face. Every frame told the story of a man who had transformed chaos into calculated dominance. Social media exploded almost instantly. Clips of the incident, from the slap to Seagal's calm yet commanding response, were being uploaded, shared, and streamed worldwide. Comments flooded in. "How did he stay so calm?" "That was pure strategy, not aggression." "Everyone needs to learn from this." Within minutes, the narrative had shifted from Will Smith's impulsive act to Steven Seagal's masterful response. The world was watching, captivated by the quiet power of composure. Meanwhile, inside the hall, murmurs turned into conversations. Guests who had been frozen in shock now whispered in awe, analyzing every micro movement and every word. Security personnel relaxed slightly, realizing that the situation was under control. Reporters adjusted their cameras, framing the story not as a scandal, but as a lesson in strategy and calm authority. Even the staff, who had been tense just moments ago, were now observing the brilliance of Seagal's response, with respect and admiration. Pause for a moment, and picture yourself there in the room. If I were witnessing this live, I would feel a mix of astonishment and admiration. The energy would be almost tangible. The shock of the slap still lingering, but now replaced by the awe of Seagal's precise and commanding reaction. I would instinctively think, this is how true control looks, not in shouting or retaliation, but in calm strategy. Now, imagine yourself in the audience. What would your reaction be? Would you cheer quietly, silently, nod in respect, or record every moment to share online? Would you take a mental note of how authority and composure can completely shift the power dynamic? Take a moment to reflect. Then type your answer in the comments. If you were witnessing this live, how would you react to Seagal's masterful control? The digital reaction mirrored the room's atmosphere. Clips went viral, trending across platforms, dissected by commentators, influencers, and martial arts fans alike. Analysts praised Seagal's strategic brilliance, his ability to respond without aggression, to assert authority with calm precision, and to transform a moment of potential humiliation into a demonstration of strength and dignity. Will Smith's impulsive act, meanwhile, became a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked emotion in public spaces. Even celebrities in attendance reacted in awe. Some whispered admiration to each other. Others silently acknowledged that the situation had been handled with unmatched intelligence. The crowd, once tense and unsure, now understood that the true narrative was not about the act of violence, but about the control, discipline, and strategic thinking that followed. Seagal's wife, regaining her composure, subtly placed a hand on his arm. It was a gesture of gratitude and relief, a silent acknowledgement of the protection and authority her husband displayed. The audience witnessed not just a confrontation, but a demonstration of loyalty, respect, and mastery over emotion. The subtle gestures, the calm posture, the controlled gaze, all of it created an unforgettable image that would be discussed and analyzed for weeks to come. By the time the event concluded, the incident had already started trending globally. Social media users were dissecting every second, debating the brilliance of Seagal's response, and praising the quiet, intelligent strategy that had turned a shocking public moment into a lesson in authority and composure. The viral spread ensured that millions who weren't present in the room were now experiencing the same tension, shock, and awe. The room's energy finally began to settle, but the impact of the moment lingered. Everyone present understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary, a clear demonstration of how control, composure, and calculated response could completely shift the narrative, outshine impulsive aggression, and leave a lasting impression on the world. By the time the gala ended, the story had already spread far beyond the walls of the hall. Clips of the shocking slap followed by Steven Seagal's calm, calculated, and commanding response were circulating on social media at lightning speed. Millions around the world watched the video, many with disbelief at first, then with growing admiration for Seagal's ability to turn a chaotic and humiliating moment into a display of mastery, composure, and dignity. The comments were pouring in from every corner of the globe. Viewers praised Seagal's restraint and strategic brilliance. This is how a true master handles chaos. The calmness was more powerful than any retaliation could have been. Lesson learned: control your emotions and command respect. Even those who had initially supported Will Smith's bold act began to acknowledge the undeniable authority Steven displayed, realizing that true power isn't in impulsive aggression but in measured, precise action. Inside the hall, the atmosphere had completely transformed. Guests who had been frozen in shock were now reflecting on the lessons embedded in the encounter. Whispers of admiration and respect filled the room. Security personnel and staff exchanged glances, recognizing that they had witnessed more than just a confrontation. They had witnessed a moment that would be remembered as a perfect demonstration of composure, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence in public. Seagal's wife, standing beside him, now exuded quiet pride and relief. The subtle touch of her hand on his arm, the way she held herself with regained confidence, spoke volumes about the protection and authority he had demonstrated. It was a powerful reminder to everyone watching that composure and dignity could restore balance in even the most unexpected, tense situations. Take a moment to imagine yourself watching this unfold live. If I were in the audience, my emotions would have gone through every stage: shock, fear, adrenaline, and finally awe at Steven Seagal's response. I would think, this is how calm intelligence overcomes impulsive aggression. This is how dignity and control leave a mark stronger than any rash reaction. Now, put yourself in that moment. How would you react if you were witnessing this event? Would you cheer quietly, be amazed, or record every moment to share online? Reflect deeply and type your answer in the comments. If you were there, what would your reaction be? And how would this moment impact you personally? Globally, the story became more than just a viral clip. It was a conversation starter about public behavior, respect, and the power of composure under pressure. Analysts, martial arts enthusiasts, and media outlets dissected every movement, every word, and every subtle gesture. The lesson was clear: impulsive actions may shock, but calm, strategic responses create lasting impact. Even celebrities and commentators who had been critical of Seagal initially now praised his approach. Social media hashtags exploded. #Seagal Mastery and #Composure Wins began trending. The story spread across news platforms, talk shows, and online forums. Millions were inspired not by the slap itself, but by the way Seagal handled the entire situation with intelligence, dignity, and authority. The incident became a defining moment in public event history. It highlighted a universal truth: composure and strategy will always outperform impulsiveness. Steven Seagal had not only protected his wife, but had also set a standard for how to handle public conflict with grace, strength, and wisdom. If you believe that calm intelligence and dignity always outweigh impulsive aggression, hit like now. Comment below and tell us, if you were there, what would your reaction be? What would you do in Steven Seagal's place? Share your thoughts and experiences, because your perspective matters. And don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping real-life stories where courage, composure, and strategy change everything. Remember, the next time chaos erupts around you, it's not the loudest reaction that wins. It's the one fueled by calm precision and strategy.